Hello, I'm Michael Harris with another edition of Indiana Roadside Markers. Today I'm in Elkhart, Indiana on West Franklin Street in front of property once owned by the parents of Ambrose Bierce. Ambrose Bierce became a well-known journalist, critic, and short story writer and lived for a short time here in Elkhart during the 1860s.
The marker reads, born Ohio, 1842. Family moved to Kosciuszko County, Indiana, 1846. Bierce lived and worked in Elkhart 1860 to 1861. Moved to California in 1866, became nationally prominent as a journalist, short story writer, and critic. Assumed dead circa 1914 on a trip to Mexico. This property purchased 1870 by his parents. Ambrose Gwinnett Bierce was born in Migas County, Ohio on June the 24th, 1842, to Marcus Aurelius Bierce and Laura Sherwood Bierce. While his exact birthplace is not known, many biographers believe that he was born in the area of Horse Cave Creek in far eastern Migas County near present-day Bashan. Ambrose was the 10th of 13 children, all of whose first names began with the letter A. Bierce's parents moved to Kosciuszko County, Indiana sometime between 1846 and 1850. His childhood was spent either in the Walnut Grove or Goose Creek settlements. While the family was quite poor, they placed a high premium on education and encouraged his interest in books. He moved to Warsaw at the age of 15 to become a printer's devil, an apprentice position at the Northern Indiana Inn. There's some sparse evidence that he may have studied topography at the Kentucky Military Institute from 1859 to 1860. However, there's not much information about the time that he spent in Elkhart as documented on the marker. In April 1861, shortly after the Civil War broke out, Bierce enlisted in the Union Army's 9th Indiana Infantry, Company C. He was involved in numerous major operations and battles, including operations in the West Virginia Campaign, the Battle of Philippi, Battle of Rich Mountain, the Battle of Shiloh, and the Battle of Chickamauga. He later wrote very graphic stories about the battles, leading many to speculate that he opposed the war. Bierce was involved in fact later wrote many short stories about his experiences in battle, and a memoir called What I Saw at Shiloh. In 1862, Bierce was commissioned as a first lieutenant and served as a topographical engineer, his main responsibility being making maps of potential battlefields. Certainly, Bierce's views on all subjects were controversial and countercultural for his day, but they're also what made his writings enduring and even relevant today. His Tales of Soldiers and Civilians, also published as In the Midst of Life, was named by the Grolier Club as one of the 100 most influential American books printed before 1900. Bierce's writings were critical of many traditional institutions, including religion and traditional values, or at least the unquestioned loyalty to those values. One of his most popular publications, The Devil's Dictionary, is filled with satirical definitions of traditional values and normative views. He was anti-religion and abhorred traditional beliefs in the afterlife, and felt that suicide was not only appropriate in many instances, but the wise and necessary choice for many. Despite his misgivings about the effects of war, he seemed to love the art of battle and wanted to receive a commission after the war. Yet much of what he wrote speaks to the battle of lost souls, those upon whom the Civil War made such a deep impression as to both shape and shatter their entire lives. Not unlike many of our veterans today who experienced trauma in the aftermath of war. Late in the conflict, Bierce received a head wound at the Battle of Kennesaw Mountain, which ended his pursuit of a military career. He was discharged in January of 1865 and moved to San Francisco in 1866, where he became a well-known contributor and editor for several local newspapers and periodicals. Those newspapers included the San Francisco Newsletter, the Arrogant, the Overlander Monthly, the Californian, and the Wasp. He was a prolific writer, producing many books and short stories, and is regarded as one of the most influential journalists in the United States, and a pioneering writer of realist fiction. Between 1872 and 1875, Bierce lived in England. It was while there in 1873 that he published his first book, The Friend's Delight, under the pseudonym of Dodd Greil. After returning to San Francisco, Bierce worked at various newspapers and as a freelance contributor, and became the editor of the Wasp in January of 1881, which he continued until September of 1885. Bierce became one of the first regular columnists and editors working for William Randolph Hearst, the San Francisco Examiner. In October of 1913, Bierce left on a tour of his former Civil War battlegrounds. In December, Bierce crossed into Mexico to join Pancho Villa's revolutionaries. Accompanying Villa's army, he gained first-hand experience of the Mexican Revolution, witnessing, among other things, the Battle of Tierra Blanca on November 23, 1913. He disappeared the following month and was rumored to be traveling with rebel troops, but was never seen again. Rather than diminish despite Bierce's spoken renunciation of fame, his memory and appreciation of his work seems to have taken on a resurgence. He's been recognized by a state historical marker honoring his birthplace in Meigs County, Ohio. An alley in San Francisco bears his name, and his home in St. Helena, California, surrounded by the vineyards of Napa Valley, is now a bed and breakfast, and an Ambrose Bierce project at the School of Humanities and Social Sciences at Penn State Erie. His old top hat is part of the Jim Bishop collection at St. Bonaventure College, and plans are underway for an Ambrose Bierce Society in Meigs County. Yet his death, and probably to his delight, remains a mystery, although there are many tales of his presumed fate, which include his death at various battles, his execution as a spy, and his assumption of a new identity as he makes his way further and further into Latin America. Based on one such theory, Padre Jaime Lionert, who served in the greater Sierra Madre area, paid for a monument to be erected in Bierce's honor. The marker reads, "Very truly witnesses suppose that here lie the remains of 1842 Ambrose Gwinnett Bierce, 1914, a famous American writer and journalist, who on suspicion of being a spy was executed and buried at this place." Yet it seems best to let Bierce himself have the final word. From the Unabridged Devil's Dictionary, published by the University of Georgia in 2001, we find Bierce's definition of immortality, a thing he never craved, but which seemed to creep up on him. Immortality, a toy which people cry for, and on their knees apply for, dispute, contend, and lie for, and, if allowed, would be right proud eternally to die for. Ambrose Bierce.
For Indiana Roadside Markers from Elkhart, Indiana, I'm Michael Harris. Please join me again soon.
Additional information on Ambrose Bierce can be found on our website at www.indianaroadsidemarkers.com. Sastoon Media also produces Midwest Entertainment Review, a podcast which reviews concerts, plays, musicals, and live events attended by Michael L. Harris throughout the Midwest, with a concentration on northern Indiana. Midwest Entertainment Review is available on all major podcast platforms and YouTube, with a home at sastoonmedia.podbean.com. That's SASTUNMEDIA.podbean, PODBEAN.com. Copyright 2021, Sastoon Media, all rights reserved.